Good afternoon, and welcome to our webinar series, Understanding and Optimizing Social Security Benefits. I want to mention a couple of upcoming chapter events. We've got our member meetup, virtual mastermind style networking on July 25th from 8 to 9 a.m. Our quarterly meeting, Ethics Courses for Financial Professionals, on August 8th from 7:30 to 10 a.m. at the Buckhead Club, where you can get those ethics credits taken care of. Also, a partner webinar series, Tax Advantaged Real Estate Investment Solutions, on August 21st from 12 to 1, and a webinar series on CDFA Toolbox, What Every Advisor Should Know About Divorce Financial Planning, on September 4th from 12 to 1. Please check our website for updates, details, and register today. We are thrilled to be joined today by Tom Drapala. He serves as the Director of Strategic Partnerships at RSSA, the leading provider of Social Security software and education for financial and insurance professionals. Please submit your questions via the Q&A feature within the Zoom controls at the bottom of your screen. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tom to begin.
Thanks, Kathy. Thank you guys so much for coming on the webinar today. I know this is a great topic, especially where we sit today with a lot of the fear mongering going on and misinformation. So we're not just going to talk about some of the rules and the complexities, but let's also talk about what's going on overall with the Social Security system. So if you do have any questions, again, throw those in the Q&A. We will save those to the end, but we will get to those questions. So even if you have something throughout, just make sure you put it in there and we'll get to it. So today, what we wanted to start with is, again, Social Security, if you've seen it today, is always in the news. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of fear mongering going on out there. And so I think it's important to talk to clients, not just in depth about Social Security, but high level, right? Like, for instance, one of the questions that I get is not always just Social Security benefit specific, but hey, I heard Social Security is running out of money, right? And it's really because a lot of clients and consumers just don't know how the Social Security system works, right? And so to understand the system, Social Security has always been and will always be, for the most part, a pay-as-you-go system. Now, what that means is that all of us and all the consumers paying into Social Security, 6.2% out of their paychecks and out of our paychecks, we're paying into the Social Security system, which in turn is paying for those who are collecting. Now, the problem is that when Social Security first started, 40 people were paying in to every one person collecting, whereas today, because so many baby boomers are retiring, right, as we know, 11,000 plus baby boomers every single day, that number has changed from 40 people paying in for one person collecting to now anywhere from like 2 to 3 people paying in for one person collecting. And that's why the trust funds are taking a hit. Now, again, if you just look at it as a pay-as-you-go system, right, those who are paying in now for those who are collecting, that covers 80% of benefits. Now, clients don't really understand that, and maybe you haven't really realized that either, but it's good to understand that if Congress makes no additional changes from now till 2033, when they're projecting the trust funds will be depleted, it's really that 20% will be cut. The 80% of benefits are still going to be that pay-as-you-go system. So if no changes are made until then, they're still going to be able to pay out 80% of benefits, or around 80% of benefits. It's that extra 20% surplus that we were running for so many years that is finally running out and is expected to be depleted by 2033. But so many people have this misconception that Social Security is going to completely run out of money and everyone's panicking and collecting at a time that really isn't strategic based on their circumstances, right? And so that's one of the things that, you know, it's important to understand and talk about with clients, because when clients are making decisions based on fear, that's where problems come in, right? And as you all know, Social Security cannot be done in a vacuum, right? Planning, what that means is everyone has a unique circumstance, right? Yeah, how many people here when they're working with a new client do some kind of, and use the hand raise feature? Who here does any kind of like fact finding information or, some kind of information form where they're understanding the needs of that client, right? Does anybody do that? Yeah, see some people raising their hand in the feature, right? Because some of the products and services that you help clients with, some of those things help one client but not the other, right? Some people have a lot of debt, some people have no debt, some people have a lot of assets, some people have, a middle amount or no assets, right? Social Security plays a different role in all these things, but integrating it into that plan, which is what you guys all do, is very important. Now, sometimes Social Security is a topic that is put on the back burner, right? Maybe it's a part of a financial plan. But how I like to use it and how we actually train people in our program to use it is actually a lead generation tool, right? Because a lot of people need financial professionals, insurance professionals, but they don't even know it, right? What they do know is that they need help with Social Security. So if you can attract them in the Social Security education realm and then bring them in and say, hey, here's what else we can help you with to build a solid foundation of retirement. Now you just attracted leads that you may not have done before, right? So again, overall, understanding at least a little bit about Social Security is going to go a long way for your practice. So today, some of the things that we want to talk about is how Social Security is the cornerstone of retirement, right? Some of the important facts that you should know, that clients should know, some of the big misconceptions. We just talked about one already. And then the decision-making process, right? What do they need to think about aside from Social Security and based on their unique circumstances, how they can plan for a secure retirement? We also want to talk about some of the basics, right? What are the terms that they should know? What are the benefits, the eligibility factors, right? A lot of people don't know they might be eligible for more than one benefit at the same time. What does that look like? And then specific factors, right? Marital status. Is the client single, married, divorced, widowed? Do they have dependent benefits, right? Are they married more than once? Or are they thinking about getting married? All these pressing questions clients have, it's a great value add to be able to understand how to be able to field some of these questions, right? And then employment status. A lot of people want to claim Social Security potentially earlier on, in their early 60s, but may not realize there's a limit on how much they're allowed to earn while collecting that benefit. So the reason why we say that Social Security is the cornerstone, right? Again, it needs to take into account the client's unique circumstances, right? Whether they have a lot of assets or a little assets, what's going on in their financial and retirement outlook, and putting together a plan based on their unique needs. Now, Social Security fits in there because a lot of people don't realize that Social Security makes up the largest or a very large portion of retirement income for most individuals, right? I think there's a statistic that say 1 in 3 people rely on it for at least 50% of their income, and 1 in 7 people rely on it for at least 90% of their retirement income. Yet there's a lot of advisors and agents out there that don't know enough that they should know in order to truly help a client plan, right? And you don't need to know every single aspect, but it's important to know at least high level how you can plan properly with that client. Now, the problem is statistically, 96% of people leave money on the table. And that really comes down to them being uneducated, right? Maybe they listen to a neighbor or a friend or family member, but it's without any context, right? Oh, just collect at this time, you might be gone tomorrow. Or hey, I waited all the way till 70. Generic answers for Social Security is actually doing a disservice to that client because there are so many options. There's so many different benefits. There's so many rules and pitfalls that impact different circumstances. And that's really how Social Security should be planned for. And if you can help someone understand and optimize their benefits and help them with these questions that not many individuals can, now we're gaining that trust, that rapport, and that relationship with that client for them to say, here are my other assets. Help me with a plan that's going to give me that secure retirement. And then you have the end, right? You're going to be able to show them all of the ways that you can help them plan for their retirement in a really successful way so that they're happy, you're happy, and it just works for everybody. So, some of the important facts that we wanted to discuss today is that if you think about your clients, not every client has 401ks and Roth IRAs and all these other retirement income streams. But the one thing they have in common is that they'll be on Social Security, right, at some time in their life. It may not just be on their own record, but it could be based on this image here, whether they're married and have a spousal benefit or divorced and maybe there's an ex-spousal benefit. What if they're a young widow? Or what if their concern is what happens when my spouse does pass away, right? And so Social Security provides a lot more than just retirement benefits. There's even benefits for widows who are nowhere near retirement age if they have minor or disabled children, right? You may have a 30-year-old person who lost their spouse and they have minor children. Well, not only are the minor children eligible, but that spouse is as well, even though no one is even near retirement age. So you can kind of think of it as like a life insurance, a protection against survivorship. Now, benefits also are consistent, meaning that there's no market fluctuation with Social Security, right? Almost like a fixed annuity, Social Security provides that foundation of dependable retirement income, right? And a lot of people are looking for that dependable retirement income stream because if the market takes a hit and 401ks and Roth IRAs, all these other funds, go down, at least they know that their dependable retirement income, like Social Security, maybe private pension, savings, those things will fund their fixed expenses, and they know they'll have that. Now, that's not to say that they should have other funds and diversify. Of course, that's true. But you also want to have a segment of retirement income that is more dependable than other ones, right? At least to offset their fixed expenses, whether that's their house, their utilities, food, all of those things. So we already talked about this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. But again, we want to understand that Social Security as a whole is not running out of money. It's the additional 20% surplus that is being depleted by around 2033, 2034, right? It changes, year by year, depending on the circumstances. But there are things that Congress can do to make sure that extra 20% goes on for many, many years, right? Now, Social Security taxes cap out this year at 176,100, I believe it is, something around there. And then after that, if you make more, they stop taking the 6.2% out of your paychecks. So one of the things is, and I'm not saying this is the answer, but just one specific example is that if they forget about the cap, if income of all income is taxed for Social Security, that alone would prolong that 20% many, many years, right? And that's just one example. And, the problem is that instead of making small incremental changes now so that it's not as noticeable, they're probably going to make changes the year or the year before that it happens or the year of that it happens, because this happened before in 1983. And the year that it was running out in 1983, they came out with the 1983 amendments, which ended up making it so that the surplus would last all the way until 2020. Now, it ended up exceeding expectations, and now it's supposed to be until 2033, 2034. But again, it shows that there can be changes that really strengthen the program and make sure everyone is paid out, because at the end of the day, clients have paid in their whole working lives, right? And Social Security is a big factor in that. It was never meant to be the only source of retirement income, but it is too important to so many people, and cutting it at all would be detrimental. Now, statistically, 3 in 4 people, which is 75% of Americans, are concerned that Social Security will run out in their lifetime. Now, why that is a concern, and again, they're not talking about the 20% cut. They're talking about Social Security will run out of funds completely. And the reason for that is all of these clickbait articles, all the misinformation and the fear mongering of the news and all of this. So, as professionals, it's not even just about helping them with specific benefits now. It's putting their mind at ease to say, what you're hearing, a lot of it is just noise, right? There may be a little bit of truth to some of this stuff, but for the most part, you're just hearing all these things that have not much truth to them. And to be able to show them how Social Security works and giving them that peace of mind, that's going to go a long way to build that client trust and relationship, which, as we all know, leads to opportunities. Now, another big concern, I always kind of point these out on my webinars because this is one of the most important things that to consider with clients. If you haven't seen this segment already, there was a 60-minute segment on Social Security overpayments, and it talked about how over 1 million Americans are overpaid each year, meaning that you get an overpayment notice in the mail, and then they're forced to pay back money based on being overpaid. Now, if you have time, either today or sometime, if you haven't seen this already, look it up on Google or YouTube, Social Security overpayments on 60 Minutes. It's a really good segment, but we're not talking about just a few dollars here or there. We're talking about people who owe back $50,000 to $250,000. One couple on this segment actually owed back $70,000, which completely wiped out their entire retirement savings, right? Now, these things could be easily avoided. However, people need to understand why overpayments happen and how they can be avoided. Too many people go to the Social Security Administration, which by law, they're not allowed to give advice. They are allowed to answer questions, but they give wrong or misleading information all the time. And so to receive an overpayment based on the wrong or misleading information from Social Security or potentially from an advisor because maybe you don't know as much as you should, this can really hurt clients, right? If your client called you and said, you helped me with all these things, but you never helped me with Social Security, and now I owe back, $50,000, $100,000. Obviously, we don't want that for our clients. We wouldn't want it for our parents, ourselves, our clients. And so again, by understanding why these things happen and how they can be avoided, this is going to be important to clients as well. Now, at the end of the day, when we're working with clients, we want to take that holistic approach, right? Now, I know a lot of advisors and agents that use Social Security as part of the planning process, but there's also a lot of agents and advisors, especially today, using Social Security as that door opening approach, right? Because not a lot of people want a financial or an insurance planner because maybe they've heard bad things. It's really about not understanding what the need is for that advisor, right? How they can help you plan properly. And so you can lead in with the Social Security conversation, right? Whether you do Social Security 101 event in person, online, or reach out to your clients and say, you can help with Social Security and tell others that you know. But leading in with this more educational approach then helps build that initial trust and relationship with the client. Now, through that process is what else is going on in your financial and retirement outlook? What do you have, right? This is where we talk about the fact-finding information so that you can help them with Social Security and build it in to their overall plan. So I wanted to point out some important Social Security terms. Now, there's a lot of Social Security terms out there, but these ones pertain to just about every single client. And we're going to talk about these in more detail as we go through this presentation. But things like full retirement age, what a primary insurance amount is, what are delayed retirement credits, and the cost of living adjustment. So again, there's a lot of terms, there's a lot of acronyms, and it could be confusing. We can't go through everything today, but these ones I pointed out as very important that you should know. So let's start with full retirement age. You might also see FRA. Now, full retirement age is based on the year that someone is born. So there's this chart here that you can take a look at. Anyone born in 1943 to 1954 all have a full retirement age of 66. And then it incrementally increases 2 months each year until 1960 or later now has a full retirement age of 67. Now, this age is important for many reasons. One being that people get confused about full retirement age. A lot of people get confused with Medicare age, which is 65. But the fact is, at full retirement age is when you would receive your PIA, which is your primary insurance amount. Again, that was one of the other important terms. So, whenever you see primary insurance amount, or PIA for short, it just means that this is the monthly amount that you would receive in benefits at your full retirement age. So, on top of being the full retirement age being your full unreduced amount of benefits, it also has several rules of Social Security that pertain to this age. The maximum spousal and survivor benefit are based on this age, and when you're no longer reduced for benefits if you continue to work. So this age really is important to understand. And again, by showing clients what that age is and what to expect, overall, it's going to be very helpful. Now, the next term was cost of living adjustments, right? COLAs. Now, one of the most important things we want to look at is when are COLAs, or cost of living adjustments, actually applied. Now, if you may have remembered, during the COVID time, we had one of the largest cost of living adjustments we've seen, especially in over a decade, which was 5.9%. That was the largest in over a decade at that time. And then it ended up shooting up all the way to 8.7%. Started to taper off recently, but it's still higher than it's been in a decade. And what happens is people were, hey, I got to go and collect because I want to make sure I get that cost of living adjustment. However, the misconception there is that you receive the cost of living adjustment whether you're collecting benefits or not from age 62 and on. So people went to collect thinking that they would only get it if they were collecting. Meanwhile, they would have got it no matter what. From age 62 and on, you get that cost of living adjustment. Now, another important part of that is that it compounds each year. So if someone was already 62 in 2022, not only did their benefit get 5.9%, but that new benefit then got 8.7%. And that new benefit got 3.2%, and so on and so forth. So a lot of people think, well, maybe I should take Social Security out early and invest it. But in reality, if you wait to claim your benefits after full retirement age, you get an 8% increase guaranteed each year that you wait up to age 70. Now, those are called delayed retirement credits, right? That's our last term. So delayed retirement credits mean that your benefits accrue 8% a year from full retirement age through 70. Now, on top of that 8%, you also get that compound cost of living adjustment. So for someone in 22, didn't just get 8%, they got 8% plus the 5.9%. That next year that they delayed, they got another 8% and then another 8.7%, 16.7% by leaving that money in the system. And so by this compounding factor, too many clients are looking at age 62 through 70 and saying, oh, here's the benefits, but they're only looking at today's dollars. They're not considering the cost of living adjustment. They're not considering how they may increase their benefits by delaying. They may not even be understanding that by continuing to work, it may be increasing their benefits by taking away their lowest years in the calculation. So for today, we're going to talk about 4 specific types of benefits. There's a disability benefit as well, but we're not going to get into that today. Today, we just want to talk about the other 4 benefits, which is a retirement benefit. That's the actual name of a benefit based on someone's own work record. A spousal benefit based on the work record of a spouse or an ex-spouse. Survivor benefits, which are based on the deceased spouse, and this can be for the surviving spouse, surviving children, and then dependents, right? A lot of people don't know that it's not just about biological children who are eligible, but also adopted children, stepchildren, or even legally dependent grandchildren are all eligible as well. So how many of you have, and you can use the hand raise feature for this as well, how many people knew that the Social Security benefits are based on your top 35 years? Raise your hand if you already knew that. All right, great. It looks like a lot of people did. Now, I'm going to lower the hands. How many people did not know it was based on the top 35 years? Be honest, it's okay. A lot of people don't know it. All right, so we're getting a few people on that as well, right? So when Social Security is calculating benefits, a lot of people have misconceptions on this as well. They actually take your top 35 indexed earnings years. Now, all of the earnings that someone has from age 59 and prior, so from the first year you worked through age 59, all of those earnings are actually multiplied by what's called an indexing factor, which is basically an inflation factor. And so someone who earned, let's just say, 130, 100 and let's go here. All right, we'll use this as an example, right? Someone who earned 132,000 in 2019. Oh wait, you know what? This is past 59. All right, I don't have it on here. Okay, so as an example, let's just say someone earned $3,000 in 1980. Well, after the indexing or inflation factor, that 3,000 might have been 15,000, right? And so it's important to know is that the top 35 years are actually the inflated years from age 59 and before. And then from age 60 and on, the earnings are taken at face value, meaning that if you earned 50,000, it would count as 50,000. Now, the way to increase benefits, right, especially later in life in people's mid 50s and 60s, where they may be earning a lot more than they've earned in the past, each year that you're doing that, you're actually increasing your benefit because you're replacing your smallest year in your top 35 with your future earnings, right? And so that's another way that people can substantially increase their benefits by making more now, replacing those smallest years. Now, with those 35 years, they're then put into a bend point formula calculation. You don't really need to know the details too much, but essentially this is creating that PIA, that primary insurance amount. Now, again, the primary insurance amount is the amount you would receive at your full retirement age. But the reason this is so important is because it creates all of the benefits around that PIA, right? So the reductions for taking before full retirement age from 62 through that age, each year you take early, you get reduced benefits. And then the delayed retirement credits, right? The 8% is all based on this PIA. Even when you're not collecting and that compounding cost of living adjustment increases benefits, it's increasing this PIA, which in turn is increasing all the benefits around it as well. Now, after that PIA is figured out, which goes to the retirement benefit. Now, if we're looking at a PIA at full retirement age of 3,000, this is 100% of benefits. You can see on this chart that by taking early before full retirement age, each year there's a reduction factor, right? We have the percentages here and then the numbers. And then you get that 8% increase each year, right? Up to age 70. So you can see what these numbers look like. Now, again, the important thing is that this is in today's dollars. It doesn't consider what if they're still working and increasing their benefit. Compounding cost of living adjustments, right? All of those things need to be considered as well. Now, to be eligible for a retirement benefit based on someone's own work record, you just need 40 quarters, also known as credits, to qualify. Now, this is generally around 10 years worth of work. You're allowed to earn up to 4 quarters or credits per year. So times 10 years would generally get you to the 40 quarters or credits that you need to qualify. And retirement benefits go from 62 to age 70. Now, spousal benefits work a little bit different. Spousal benefits also start at 62, but they don't increase after full retirement age. So as you can see in this spousal benefit chart, unlike retirement benefits that get that 8% increase each year after full retirement age, spousal benefits stop increasing at full retirement age. So as you can see here, it maxes out at 50% of the higher earning spouse's PIA. Doesn't increase after that, but for taking early, there are reductions. Now, For a spousal benefit, you just need to be married for at least 1 year, 12 months, and you can only collect a spousal benefit in two ways. One, your spouse needs to be collecting first, so you can't collect on a spouse that hasn't begun collecting on their own first. And two, the spousal benefit needs to be more than what you can receive on your own work record. Okay. Now, for divorced requirements, the couple need to have been married for at least 10 years. They're very strict with this rule. Somebody was married for 9 years and like 11 months, they still got denied. So this 10-year mark is very important. You and the ex are at least 62 years old, and then you are currently single. As soon as you get remarried, you automatically give up the rights to the ex-spousal benefit. Now, there's also those who are what we call dual entitled, right? Meaning that they're entitled to more than one benefit at the same time. Usually that means either a retirement benefit and a spousal benefit, retirement benefit and an ex-spousal benefit, or retirement and a survivor payment. Now, how Social Security works is that they always want each individual to collect as much on their own record before collecting on another. So let's just say that the total spousal benefit was $1,500, but your own work record benefit was $1,000. Well, you wouldn't get your $1,000 and the $1,500, but it would be a combination of both. You would get the $1,000 from your record, and the remaining $500 would come from that spousal top-off. And that's what dual entitlement is. Now, as for survivor benefits, right? Survivor benefits start at 60 years old. Now, as we said earlier, retirement and spousal benefits start at 62. Survivor payments can start as early as age 60 or even 50 if the person claiming, the survivor, is disabled. Now, for survivor payments for those who were currently married at the time of passing, you just need to have been married for at least 9 months. And then for divorced, the 10-year mark still counts. Now, as you can see here in this chart, the survivor payments start as early as age 60. But again, just like spousal payments, they max out at full retirement age. There's no delayed retirement credits for survivor benefits. So the max you can get is at full retirement age, which would be 100% of the deceased benefit, right? So if you take early, they are reduced as well. The one caveat with survivor benefits, and this is important as well, is that there used to be a rule where you can do a restricted application. Not sure how many of you knew about that, but you were able to take a retirement benefit and delay a spousal, or the other way around. In 2015, they got rid of that. They repealed that law, and even those grandfathered in are now out of that age range. So no one can take advantage of that anymore. Once you file, you're filing for the benefits you're entitled to. You can't take one and delay the other for retirement and spousal. However, they still allow you to do this for survivor benefits. So if you're entitled to a retirement benefit and a spousal benefit in your 60s because you had an early passing spouse, you can take a retirement benefit as early as age 62 and delay the survivor up to the full retirement age, or the other way around. You can take a survivor benefit as early as 60 and delay the retirement benefit all the way up to age 70. Now, remember, in between those options, you have every single option in between. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to do survivor at 60, retirement at 70. It could be survivor at 61, retirement at 68, right? There's so many options in between there. And again, this is all dependent on the client's circumstances. Now, for dependent benefits, what constitutes as a dependent for Social Security purposes is children under the age of 18 or 19 if they're still in high school, a child with disabilities if the disability onset happened before age 22. There's no upper limit for this. If you have a disabled child that is 30, 35, 40, as long as the disability onset happened before 22, they're eligible for benefits. And then for a spouse, any age spouse caring for a child under the age of 16 or disabled is also eligible, even though they're not at retirement age yet. Now, to be able to collect a dependent benefit, that other spouse or the other person needs to be collecting on their own record. You can't just have a spouse and children collect whenever. That uh, other spouse, right, the other parent, needs to be claiming on their own record first for these dependents to claim on them, right? And when that parent is collecting on their own record, the dependents are eligible for 50% of that retiree's PIA while they're living and 75% when they pass. Now, there is a family maximum, which means that Social Security is not just going to pay out a whole bunch of money for a family that has multiple dependents, right? You may have a family with 5 dependents or 7 dependents, but Social Security is not just going to say, here's, a whole bunch of money. There's a maximum on how much Social Security will pay out to each family, right? Which is called the family maximum. And then for the earnings test, which is really just an earnings limit, this limits on how much you can collect, how much you can earn while collecting your Social Security benefit, right? Now, these limits only occur before full retirement age. Like I said before, full retirement age is such an important age for many reasons. This is one of those reasons. Once you reach full retirement age, again, depending on the year that you're born, that's when you can earn as much money as you want without any benefit reductions. But if you decide you want to collect before full retirement age and continue to work, then you may have a reduced benefit. Now, the first important thing is what counts as income towards this earnings limit? Well, the only thing that really counts is employment income from W-2 wages or net income from self-employment. But all the other income like pensions, annuities, retirement income, rental income, capital gains, inheritance, none of that counts towards this limit. It's only earned income from wages or net income from self-employment, okay? Now, again, if someone is in that situation where they want to claim before full retirement age and they're still earning wages, then they have to look out for these 2 limits. Now, the reason there's 2 limits is because there's almost like a transition period. So from age 62 through the year right before full retirement age, there's a limit of $23,400 for 2025, in which $1 for every $2 is withheld from their benefit over that limit. And then there's that transition period, right? Because full retirement age and on has no limit, they actually do an upper limit in the year someone will reach full retirement age. So basically from January of that full retirement age year through that month will be an upper limit of $62,160 for 2025, in which $1 for every $3 would be withheld. Now, again, this is important to know, not so much about the minutia right now, but more so that if a client says, I'm 62, I want to collect my benefit, but I'm earning $100,000, logically that just doesn't make sense, right? They wouldn't get a benefit anyway because their benefit would be reduced down to 0, and they're just hurting their overall plan, right? That's really what I want you to get across today, is that not so much remembering the limits or, understanding all the nuances about this, but I think the takeaway from this slide is what counts as income towards the test and what doesn't. And 2, if a client is making substantially more than the limit, it just wouldn't make sense for them to claim for the most part. Now, you may have heard that there was a new law that was repealed in January 2025. Now, it's not a new law, but there was a repeal of these past rules or laws for Social Security that were repealed in January. Now, these 2 rules were the WEP, which is the windfall elimination provision, and the GPO, which is the government pension offset. Now, these 2 rules impacted clients who had what was called non-covered pensions, which essentially a non-covered pension was a pension they either were receiving or will receive based on work that did not pay into Social Security. This was a lot of teachers, government jobs, government-related jobs, not in every state, but in certain states where they just paid into the pension plan, but they never paid the 6.2% out of their checks into Social Security. And that was called a non-covered pension. And when you had a non-covered pension, you were impacted by these two laws. Now, what happened is they said that that wasn't fair, that they shouldn't be impacted negatively. And so they were repealed in January of 2025. For those who were already collecting, going back to January of 24, they were given a lump sum to make up for that last year. They won't go all the way back, but they were going back to January of 24 to give them a lump sum of what they were owed that they didn't get during that year. And then their benefits were adjusted going forward. Okay. So at this time, hope you guys learned at least a little bit today about Social Security. But if you do have any questions, now would be the time to put those in the Q&A. I'm going to be answering as many questions as I can. And again, put them in. I'm happy to answer anything that you have. All right, so the first question or comment, overpayments are a really important thing to avoid and a good topic to use as a lead in conversations with clients. Yeah, absolutely. We don't want to put too much fear in clients, but you kind of have to because you want to avoid overpayments, right? No one wants to receive an overpayment. I actually just did a recent video on, if you do receive an overpayment, for the most part, you can repeal it and send a waiver and all of that. But for the most part, you're going to have to try and, pay it back either as a lump sum or I think they have now where you can take 50% out of your Social Security check. What happened was, I think during the last administration, they said that you only have to pay 10% out of your check. Then the new administration changed it to 100%, meaning your whole check was withheld. And now they moved it back to 50%. But again, you don't want any overpayments for clients, right? That's really what it comes down to. All right, next, can you provide insight into how recent legislation has affected the claiming strategies for spousal and survivor benefits, specifically regarding clients who previously planned to claim one type of benefit and later switch? So I think that's actually one of the things that I ended up talking about here at the end is that, yes, the law in 2015, which was called the BBA, Bipartisan Budget Act of 2015, got rid of that rule where you can take the retirement and delay the spousal or vice versa. And there's still a lot of need to plan, right? There's even with that new WEP and GPO that I just talked about gone, clients are consistently looking and seeking for professionals that can help with Social Security. So yeah, I mean, there's rule changes that consistently happen. Some are just general year after year changes that occur, like the quarter of coverage amount, the highest PIA, all of those different things. And then there's some really big changes that happen, like the 2015 rule, the rule that just happened in 2025. So those are things to look out for. Next question, what is the highest PIA available? So the highest PIA actually changes year after year. And I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I think it's somewhere around the high 3,000s or low 4,000s for this year. I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. And that next question, are reduced benefits accrued? Are reduced benefits accrued and paid later if someone is over the earnings limit and under full retirement age? So I think I know what you're trying to say. So the benefits that are withheld, let's just say someone is working and they're earning over the 23,400. Let's just say they earn 30,000. I think the question is, what happens to those withheld benefits? Do they disappear or do they go back to the person? And yes, that is true that they do get recalculated back into the benefit at full retirement age. Now, the bad part is that they calculate it in a way that spreads the withheld amounts over a period of 20 years. This is actually in the POMS manual that they spread it out over a period of 20 years. So it's such a little amount that goes back into it. It's not worth it unless you just did it because it was an accident, meaning that you weren't earning a lot when you first started and then you ended up getting a job and going back to work and then that happened, right? That's different. But if you know your client's making a lot of money, just avoid it if you can. And then the last one so far, if you guys have more questions, please put those in. But the last one is, what impact does the big, beautiful bill have on Social Security benefits being taxed? So I personally have not read the bill or talked to my team about how it directly impacts benefits or Social Security. So to be frank, I won't comment on it because I don't want to say the wrong thing. We will hopefully be doing another session about the Big Beautiful Bill, maybe with Kathy and her team over the next month or so. But right now, I won't comment just because I'm not knowledgeable about the changes yet. Next question. So just to clarify, if client is a surviving spouse, has not got remarried, she can start claiming on her record, even at a reduced benefit if she's 62, and then at full retirement age, switch to a deceased spouse for the higher benefit. That is correct. Yes. So again, if you did that strategy, you would claim your own benefit early, retirement benefits early at the reduced amount. But by delaying the survivor, you're delaying it so that it increases and gets the highest survivor payment. So essentially, when clients want to take one and switch to the other, you generally would want to take logically the lower one first, right? So if your retirement benefit is the lower one, you want to take that and delay survivor. If your retirement benefit is the higher benefit, you want to take survivor early and delay your retirement benefit, right? That's the general basis of it. Is there any further questions that you guys have? It could be Social Security related. It could be based on what we talked about earlier about the trust funds. Any questions that you guys have, I'm happy to answer those.
Hey, Tom, we do have one question in from Melissa in the chat.
Okay.
I have a client that was affected by WEP but died in December of 2024 before receiving anything. Have you heard of anyone receiving the WEP adjustment after death?
Yeah, so they won't pay it out after death, unfortunately, because for Social Security, there's no like beneficiaries or anything like that, unless she had a surviving spouse. But even then, the spouse wasn't impacted by the WEP, only she was. So most likely, there's going to be no additional benefits paid out in that situation. But if you do have clients that were collecting from 2024 and are currently, still living and impacted by the WEP, they are giving out lump sum payments. Most people have received them already, but you can make sure with clients that they got theirs.
Great. And another one in the chat from Jeff, the file and spend benefits for surviving spouses are still reduced by work earnings before FRA, right?
Oh, correct. Yes. So even if you are eligible to take a survivor benefit and delay the retirement or the other way around, all benefits are subject to the earnings limits. So the 23,400 and the 62,160, that impacts all benefits. So that's a great question.
Great.
I'm seeing another one. I'm seeing another one in the Q&A for divorce client who qualifies for spousal benefits. Will Social Security be able to disclose if that spouse is already receiving benefits so that she can claim? So that's a great question. So they won't like come out and say, yes, they're collecting. They'll just basically say, yes, you're eligible, which means that they are. But one caveat to claiming an ex-spousal benefit is that there's something called independently entitled, which means that if you're divorced for 2 or more years, your ex doesn't need to be collecting for you to collect on them. Okay, they still need to be 62, the ex, but they don't need to be collecting for you to collect if the clients were divorced for 2 years or more. So just that's another caveat.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Well,
so you know what? Just closing remarks for me, Kathy, is that if anyone has additional questions, my email is on the screen, thomas.drapala@rssa.com. So if you guys end up thinking of something later on, just shoot me a quick email. I'm happy to reply to it. And if anyone is interested in learning more about the RSSA program for your own business and your own clients, again, just reach out by email. I'm happy to send you some information on the platform.
great. Thanks so much, Tom. This is a complex and very important subject, and we appreciate your valuable insights and this informative presentation. Thanks to everyone who connected with us today, and look for an event survey along with the replay and PowerPoint deck to follow.
Sounds great. Thanks, everybody. Hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, Tom.